Now, if you guys follow me, which you probably don't because I'm not that cool, if you do though, you guys would recognize that I said I believe that the Fed will lower the Fed's funds rate at its last meeting, and and all the statistics showed that they are not going to lower it. But I was like, no, they're going to lower it. I could feel the economy, and they didn't lower it. So I was like, oh darn, well I was wrong. However, if a couple of days later, if you remember, the jobs report came out, and the jobs report was horrible, the worst in history. And if the Fed would have had that information, the jobs report prior to the Fed funds meeting, even 1 day prior, there's no debate that the Fed would have lowered the Fed's funds rate by at least 0.25% or 25 bips. So I think I was right by just the jobs report that the Fed should have lowered the Fed funds rate, which unfortunately kind of leads to Trump saying maybe your too late Powell might be the right acronym for him. He's just too late. He obviously lives in a glass tower, doesn't see or feel the effects of what's happening out here. He's going off of data that is late, that lags, that is frankly just not accurate. And these reports are showing that they're not accurate, and he's making his decisions off of inaccurate data. But let me premise that with saying he still might not lower in 2 months, even though I think he should lower it by 50 basis points because he's technically behind by a quarter. But he might not still lower, and let me show you why. Okay, so this is the jobs report. You can see right here, inflation essentially is at 2.7% year over year, and inflation only ticked up by 0.2%. So these are, I mean, this is a horrible number. But from here on out, these are okay, with the exception of this right here. I mean, that's a little higher than they wanted, but this right here is phenomenal. When inflation went down in this scenario. But this for CPI, you guys, CPI as a whole isn't that big of a deal because there's so much volatility in CPI. What you really want to look at when you're doing this is you want to look at core CPI. That's minus food and energy. Core energy is at 3.1% year over year. The Fed said that they want core to be at 2%, and it's over 3% at core. That would be a phenomenal reason for Jay Powell to say, hey, inflation is still up. We still haven't tackled this thing. What we've been doing for the last couple of years has and has not worked yet because we're still not at the target of 2% or low twos. We're not even in the high twos. We're in the threes. So here's the dilemma. What is Powell to do? The economy is slowing to a crawl when it comes to new jobs. So if you lower the Fed funds rate, make money cheaper to obtain, then that can spur the economy. However, that could also help and create more inflation, and we're not at the target inflation spot yet because we're at 3% core. So what does Jay Powell sacrifice? Does he sacrifice jobs and economy booming, or does he sacrifice inflation and it actually hurting all Americans all at once? Economics will show that inflation is the most important thing. Look at Venezuela. Their currency is not worth the paper that it's printed on. And I strongly believe that that is what Jay Powell's leaning towards is the inflationary aspects of the economy. So who knows? There's like a 90-something% chance that the Fed's going to lower the Fed funds rate. But with the core inflation at 3%,